Good day, everyone. This is teaching biology at senior secondary school, and today we're starting the lecture by looking at the national policy on education. When you talk about national policy on education, it is actually a document that contains the philosophy and goals of education in Nigeria. That is, it contains you know, it's a document that contains what guides the education and the structure of education in Nigeria. And we are considering this in this course because science is shown in the national policy on education at all levels. For example, it shows us to inculcate the spirit of inquiry and creativity through exploration of nature, environments, lay sound basis for basic scientific, critical, and reflective thinking, acquisition of skills for self-reliance, giving the child opportunity to developing manipulative skills, then to provide knowledge and understanding of the complex physical world. All these are, what are shown in the National Policy of Education, on education, and they are pointer towards science, the study of science. So we want to look at the aims and objectives of teaching science in secondary school. When we look at what science is, it is actually a particular way of knowing the world. That is a particular way of finding out about the world. It is a way of thinking. It is a way of investigating and a body of knowledge. That is, when you think about the world and you try to find out to know about the world, whatever knowledge or information gotten from the process of investigating about the world, they are put together as body of knowledge in science. Now let's look at the aims of teaching science. Aims of teaching science is actually to enable learners to develop inquiry minds and curiosity about nature. That is, to be able to develop a mind that will want to inquire about nature, that will want to find out about nature, then to understand how science operates, to actually know how science operates, to know and understand scientific concepts and principles. And it is actually to enable learners to acquire knowledge, conceptual understanding, and skills to solve problems and make informed decisions in scientific context. It is actually aims of science is actually aims of teaching science is actually to acquire knowledge, conceptual understanding, and skills to solve problems and make informed decisions in scientific context. That is, to be able to make decisions that are concerned or that are based on scientific understanding. It is actually to develop skills of scientific inquiry, to design and carry out scientific investigations, as well as to evaluate evidence to draw conclusion. It is to communicate scientific ideas. It is good because the teaching of science, one of the aims is to actually be able to learn how to communicate scientific ideas and to be able to demonstrate attitudes and develop values towards values for honesty as well as respect for the environment. Then let us look at the objectives of teaching science. The objectives of teaching science include, that is the objectives of teaching science at secondary school include to impart knowledge to the students about the world and its effect on the environment. That is, to be able to impart knowledge about the world to the students and the influence or effect such knowledge or such information gotten from there is having on the environment. To also use scientific method, that is to enable learners to be able to use scientific methods such as problem, hypothesis, experiment, conclusion in making decisions. It is also to develop problem-solving skill, develop scientific attitudes as well as scientific views. That is to be able to view things at the scientific point of view. Now, let's look at aims and objectives of teaching biology in secondary school. It is good to note that the aims and objectives of teaching biology in secondary school are actually gotten from the aims and objectives of teaching science in secondary school. So let's first of all look at the aims of teaching biology at secondary school is to help students to increase knowledge about all types of organisms. That is for them to be able to have the knowledge of all types of organisms, that is possible organisms that we have, not just organisms that are existing in their environment, or not just organisms they can see, but for them to have increased knowledge about all types of organisms. Then to encourage greater benevolence in the relationship between humans and natural environment, that is to increase or encourage their knowledge in the relationship, that is for them to have the benevolent knowledge of relationship between humans and the natural environment. Also to help students implement biological skills into various technologies and management techniques, that is to be able to implement certain biological skills. That's why we have biotechnology nowadays, to increase the understanding of living systems and allow one to consider the system relationships to the self and other organisms in the natural environment. That is to be able to increase understanding of living systems, that is to increase the understanding about the living systems and how these living systems are considered, to consider the relationship of these living systems, especially self, that is oneself, and other organisms in the natural environment. Now let's look at the objectives of teaching science in senior secondary, of teaching biology, sorry, in secondary school. The main objectives of teaching biology at senior secondary school, we have the main objectives, and they are to prepare students to be able to acquire adequate laboratory and field skills. That is for students to be able to acquire adequate, that is enough, that is good for them, that is going to empower them, adequate laboratory and field skills in biology. Then to be able to acquire meaningful and relevant knowledge in biology. Be able to acquire meaningful and relevant knowledge in biology. Ability to apply scientific knowledge to everyday life in matters of personal, community health, and agriculture. That is to help them when they acquire, to help them to be able to acquire that knowledge that will help them to be able to relate the scientific knowledge or the biological knowledge that has been acquired, to be able to relate such knowledge with everyday life, with their personal life, with their community health, with agriculture, and also to be able to make, to be able to develop reasonable and scientific, a functional scientific attitude. Generally, we could say that objectives of teaching biology objectives of teaching biology in secondary school allows learners to view biology as a process of inquiry into the living world, that is to inquire, to find out about the living world, that is the living things in the world, and also to be able to develop in students the ability to use biological processes and principles to solve social problems. That is, they should be able to allow them to have the ability to be able to use biological processes, to be able to use it to solve social problems. Then to be able to apply the concepts and methods that are acquired in the learning of biology, to be able to acquire this to every situation, that is every situation that comes along their way, so that they'll be able to apply the concepts and the methods learned in biology to those situations. Also to be able to make, it also allows students to be able to make rational judgment based on sound knowledge of the method of science in biology. It also allows them to demonstrate practical skills in handling scientific apparatus, especially those ones that are used in biology, to also help them to demonstrate excellence and professional competence in teaching secondary school biology. It also allows learners to inculcate positive scientific attitude, to be able to inculcate positive scientific attitude and values in society, promote positive disposition towards biology, science and scientific principles, and also to make them successful, or to make them to have successful career in the teaching of biology. Now, let's look at overall trends of biology education in Nigeria. It is good to note that biology education never started with Western education. That is, biology education, the teaching and learning of biology, does not begin with the commencement of a Western education in Nigeria. Even the science education was not in the curriculum. It was not part of what, was taught when Western education was introduced into Nigerian education system. But in Nigerian education system, especially at the secondary school level, science education was introduced into secondary school curriculum in 1859 by the missionaries that established those schools. And this science education was introduced in only 4 secondary schools: Church Missionary Secondary School, that is CMS Bariga; St. Gregory College, Lagos; Hope Waddell Institute, Calabar; and Baptist Training College, Ogbomoso, with the introduction of rudiments of science. The rudiment of science that was introduced then was a nature study. Nature study is learning about the environment in form of outdoor observation of plants and animals. It is learning about the environment through observation of plants and animals that are present in the environment. But in 1920, it was discovered that nature study could no longer satisfy the needs of the environment, could no longer satisfy the needs of the needs of Nigerians. So general science was introduced. In 1950, the 3 branches of science was introduced, that is biology, chemistry, physics. That means that when science was introduced in 1859 as rudiment, it was not divided into the 3 branches of science until 1950, and these were introduced for the last 3 years, that is into the last 3 years of secondary school curriculum. Then we used to have 5 years in secondary school, which are usually referred to as Form 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it was introduced, the 3 branches of science were introduced in 1950 into the last 3 years in secondary school then. By the mid of 1950s, the USA and Britain, they came up with new perception of the process of scientific inquiry. That is, they came up with another way of, another way or another perception. They perceived another way, maybe I would say another way of learning science, another way of investigation, another way of the process of science, which we refer to as scientific inquiry. And so this reform in science education led to the launching of what we refer to as Russian Sputnik in 1957. And from this, many curriculum projects were launched late in 1950s, like 1958, 1959. Now, and this new or many curriculum projects then include biological science curriculum study, BSCS, physical science committee, the AFAC project physics, that's HPP, the chemical bond approach, that is CHEM study. This led to launching of Northfield science project. That is in 1962, when after the coming up of this curriculum project, then we had the launching of a Northfield science project in 1962. The emphasis of this project is to shift from expository method of teaching science to learner-centered method. The expository method of teaching or learning science is when the teacher or the instructor comes up and begins to tell or give learners information about science. But the learner-centered method of teaching science makes the learners to be involved. The learners too are involved in the process of teaching science. The trends of reforms in science education in developed countries also influences developing countries such as Nigeria. So that that is, as we have reforms taking place in developed countries like USA, like Britain, it came to the knowledge of Nigerians too that as these ones are developing, this will also influence the teaching of science or science education in developing countries such as Nigeria too. So after independence in 1960, that is after independence in Nigeria, there was curriculum innovations in science at secondary schools in Nigeria. That is, we had innovation in the curriculum in secondary school in Nigeria. And the innovations came up by the efforts of development agencies and science associations. Science associations such as the Science Teachers Association, development agencies such as WAEC, such as the WAEC, that's examination body. We have another one that's the government oriented, that is NERC, that is National Education Research Council, which is now NERDC, that is National Education Research Development Council. We also have another agency which is CESAC, CESAC, that is Comparative Education Study and Adaptation Center. So all these ones came up and tried to look at the curriculum and gave us new curriculum. The efforts in this direction, that is in the direction of coming up with new development in the curriculum, resulted in the following science curriculum projects at different periods, that is at different times, not just at the same time. We have had and we still have Nigerian Integrated Science Project, NISP, the Nigerian Secondary School Science Project, NSSSP, the National Science Curriculum for Senior Secondary Schools, NSCSSS. So these are the ones that we have, and at the end of the day, this gave birth to different reforms in the teaching of science, biology inclusive. Thank you.